Thank you for watching. I watched the Kent Hovind debate, and I've got some thoughts about it. This was a debate against Nick Suter. The debate format was just the two guys, no moderator. They were using internet technology to do this debate, so they were each in a different physical location, but, you know, doing what the internet lets us do, talk to somebody far away. They didn't have rigid set times. Kent Hovind was content if they got equal times. Neither of them interrupted the other during the first part of the debate where they got their long opening presentations. When Nick Suter interrupted Kent later on in the debate, he was respectful about it. He had let Kent make a full point, get a full sentence out, and wanted to respond to what Kent had said. So Nick went first, thanked Kent for the time. He put up a picture that had a list of do's from the Bible and don'ts from the Bible, and a person in the middle of it. And his point with that picture was an atheist to put together that list, but the atheist didn't get it right. And let's see. If you want to learn about the Bible, you should go to somebody who believes it, a minister, perhaps. Because some atheists don't have an open mind. You should have an open mind when you learn about anything. So don't go to atheists about the Bible, but he says you should also not go to Ken Ham or creationists to learn about evolutionary biology. Go to an evolutionary biologist. He even said don't go to other scientists because they don't specialize in evolutionary biology. So if you go to a physicist, a geologist, a doctor, they're not going to be as helpful for you to understand it. That point, I mildly disagree with him on that. Somebody does not have to believe in something to give an honest assessment of it and be accurate about it. And Kent Hovind, he is accurate. He quotes the textbooks. He quotes the websites for public universities, or universities, public or private, that believe the religion of evolutionism. So you're getting the accurate information if you go to Kent Hovind. But you need to be careful about getting information from somebody who does not believe. Off the top of my head, I cannot name a vocal public speaker or person who does not believe the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but will give you an honest, accurate assessment of what our beliefs are. I know if you go to a lot of the people that are very eager to tell you about us that aren't us, you will get inaccurate assessments and descriptions of our beliefs. James White is not a good source of information about us. Aaron Shavalov. So on to my next point of the debate. He gave the scientific definition of a theory and claimed that evolution is a theory. No, it isn't, but just in case you don't know, the scientific definition of a theory is basically something, an idea that somebody's had that has stood up to some scrutiny. It's a scientific law if it just keeps going, if it's, never proven wrong. Theory is when scientists aren't talking about theory, or when non-scientists are using the word, then it just means somebody's idea. That would be a hypothesis if scientists are using the terms. He said that gravity is a theory. No, it isn't. Gravity is a law. Things go down. You can be absolutely certain anytime you drop something that is not full of helium or some of the other handful of airs that are lighter, it's going down. That is a law. Now, how and why gravity does what it does, that is a theory. So explaining how and why gravity is a theory, but the fact that it happens is a law. It's a fact. it's even more certain in a theory. He gave some examples of arguments that are made out of ignorance or by people who don't really understand the theory. One of them was, if we came from an ape, why are there still apes? You get a good point there. The theory doesn't say that humans came from a chimpanzee, but there was a common ancestor that now doesn't exist. So maybe we shouldn't use that argument. Comparing elephant and ears of corn. There he was wrong. It's not lying about something if you give a summary of it. When Kent Hovind does his debates, he does not have 20 days to go through an entire list of the evolutionary sequence, what is believed. So he gives a summary from here to here. If that's what's believed, then that's being accurate. That's not being dishonest to give a summary of what somebody believes. He said all fossils are transitional animals, and all animals reproduce after the same kind. Not according to the theory of evolutionism. The hypothesis, to be more accurate, of evolutionism says you will eventually get dramatic changes to different kinds of animals. It doesn't say in one generation. And Kent Hovind never says that evolutionism teaches in one generation. But what we see is mutated things are less survivable in the wild. They are weaker. The changes wouldn't keep building up to something new if the thing gets weaker as we see changes happening. He claimed the ancient Greeks discovered evolution when they realized they could turn different plants into what we now call the domesticated versions, which are very different from the wild versions. But they are still plants. Wheat and corn, even though they're different, the domestic version and the wild version, it's still a plant. It didn't become a tree, and it didn't become an animal, and so that is microevolution, and it's not the same as macroevolution. He said that the Greeks didn't realize you needed something to guide it, and Darwin found what guided it. No. Natural selection selects. It eliminates things. It makes less of things. It does not make more of things. So Darwin did not find the guide to evolution. I haven't thoroughly studied Darwin, but a little bit I've got from him from reliable sources. Is not that Darwin was a devoted Christian. He was looking for an excuse to prove Christianity wrong. He was disenchanted with God when he came up with his hypothesis. Let's see. He claimed that Darwin predicted the orchid moth, the star orchid, needed to be fertilized, pollinated by a moth with a very long nose. What's the exact number he gave, but several inches long nose, not just a little feeder tube. And he was scolded and laughed for that. Okay, that's not an evolutionary prediction. That's just, there's got to be something that fits in that. He was proven right eventually on that one, but that's not a single cell animal turning into a moth. That is even more likely the result of a designer if animals and plants have parts that fit together. He claimed Darwin didn't want evolutionism. Not from what I've heard. And then he brought up the tree of life. And he contradicted what he said earlier. He said animals always produce the same kind of animal. But the tree of life has animals that are not the same kind of animal, all connected. He just proved himself wrong. If anybody ever makes a sport out of debating where there's numbers and penalties and things, so you get actual score at the end instead of a vague, subjective, he won, he lost, I liked him, I didn't like him. That should cause a lot of loss of points to be contradictory. He claims species can't jump branches. It's a straw man. No, it's not a straw man. If you just say that that tree has the two things connected. Kent Hovind has never said that things jump branches on the tree. He never said that, yeah, but they're all connected. He claimed there are gaps in the Bible. That doesn't make it false. Now, there's a big difference between the Bible doesn't tell us all the details about something and missing links to the fossil record. That there's a big difference. Claimed something about false predictions. Mysteriousness hiccups, tree of life. Okay. Why did I write the note false predictions? But he's claimed that some mysteries are solved by evolutionism. Like, why our nerves go the way we do? Because in all mammals there's a nerve that goes all the way down. I think he said it reached all the way to the heart and then goes back up to get to your voice box. It's a common mammal design, that nerve that goes down and back up. And he claims by evolution we can figure out where it started to happen, why it started to happen. No, that's putting your opinion onto dead fossils and bones in the ground, but things could be designed that way, and then there you go, the designer. Okay, claimed the DNA tree of life matches all the other ones. I've heard other scientists who believe the religion of evolutionism say differently, that there's a different tree of life if it's based on what the animal looks like, or certain DNA indicators. He says, as long as you agree to microaggression, you're in the game, and made the false equivalency between micro and macroevolution. He put together a human skull diagram, put it up on a screen, but that human skull diagram was still all humans. We can't be certain they all gave birth to each other because they were just bones in the ground. And bones in the ground don't tell you who the parent is. He claimed that the majority of Christians accept evolutionism, and it doesn't contradict the Bible. And it's never been, evolutionism never has been defeated. Don't talk to creationists. He repeated the point about who you should go to for information about evolutionism. Go to evolutionist. He pointed out there are Christians who believe the Bible. Okay. Okay. And alright, now Kent Hovind had his turn to make his first presentation. Let's see. And well, the last point that Nick Suter made was that there are people who believe evolutionism, they believe it, and they hold the Bible dear. Now, my thought on that, they hold to two religions. They're a dual religionist. Anyway, Kent Hovind made his his presentation. He started out by looking up the word true in dictionaries. And summarized the religion of evolutionism by saying that all life has a common ancestor according to them, and then said no. So that's not true. He quoted Pilate. He made an analogy. The textbooks, a lot of them are written under the assumption evolutionism is true, and the students are asked questions like, how did something evolve? And not given the option of, did it evolve? That's like teaching students that elephants are orange, or asking questions, are elephants orange or blue? And no, actually the answer is grayish. He pointed out that Darwin was not a naturalist, he was a theologian. He didn't have degrees in science, he didn't spend many years studying science, he went to school to be a theologian. And I need to soothe my throat. It's ironic, some of the people that want to make a big deal about whether Kent Hovind has a real degree are very eager to believe what Darwin said when his schooling was for theology. They're hypocrites or inconsistent. Okay. Kent Hovind brought up a chart of whales and pointed out what he thought about that. And then he brought up 4 premises of Darwin's theory or hypothesis. Animals are dynamic. That means they're not going to stay the same. And that's true. Animals do. They're giant sloths. Look at dogs. They do make changes. And so Darwinism is right on that one. New species form, new species go extinct. That's right. Premise 2, things gradually happen and gradually you get new species. Kent Hovind would agree with that. If we're talking about new species, you get a different kind of deer, but it's still a deer. But not if we're talking about new kinds of animals. 3, all organisms have a common ancestor. And 4, natural selection causes changes and steadiness. Yeah, that premise tries to have it both ways. When it does this, it's Darwinism. When it does that, it's Darwin's theory. It's... Okay, so, Alright, chart, cousin... Oh, yeah. So, I think that note was Kent Hovind pointed out that the family tree comparison with the tree of life is not accurate because my cousin is still a human. He's not different. Evolution claims fossils as their proof, but it's not really evidence. If you find a bone in the ground, all you know is it died. You don't know what its children were. Evolutionism claims that animals in the past gave birth to different children. These differences added up to whole different kinds of animals, different phyla, different classes, different orders. But, we just know the thing died. It's unreasonable to assume something, a few million years ago could do something that animals right now aren't doing. See, structure. Some of the claimed evidences of evolution are evidence from structure, evidence from development. Evidence from development, in other words, of saying a little baby inside the mother goes through all the stages of evolution all over again. But that's a lie. The different animals and their development in the egg, whether inside or outside of the mother, they develop differently. They don't all go through the same stages. Let's see. There are 4 forces that evolutionism claims do all the work that needs to be done. Some of those forces are true, but evolutionists give them more credit or more power than they actually have. Those are natural selection, genetic drift, gene flow, and mutations. Natural selection. Kent gave an example to show that natural selection just selects things and... Oh, I forgot to start my timer. Just selects things and doesn't create anything. If he tells you to go get him a hammer from the screwdriver drawer, you're never going to bring him a hammer. because it's just not there. And worms don't have feathers and wings that are needed to fly. It's just not there in the DNA. And yeah, despite Nick claiming that, well, God put all the information in the cells that's needed for evolution to happen. No, he didn't. The information is not there in a single cell animal for wings and lungs and all the different things that are in multicellular animals that aren't single cell animals. Ken asked if genetic drift would get worms to have wings and fly. No, was his answer to that. For genetic mutations to make changes to animals, you need to have that mutation happen with a male and female of the same species, in the same place, in the same time period, and you need them to want to mate. I've read news reports of pandas being tricked into mating when they didn't want to. Apparently some pandas think other pandas are ugly. And that's just increases the unlikelihood of that happening when you need all that stuff to happen. So Kent Hovind pointed out that if you say a protozoa became a biology teacher and you say it happened instantly, everyone would say it's a fairy tale. No, it doesn't happen. But if you say it slowly, then we call it science, and that's ridiculous. And he's got a good point there. He quotes in the New Testament Peter, the first president of the Church of Jesus Christ after Jesus Christ left the earth, predicted evolution. And I think Kent's got a good point on this one. Peter said in the last days scoffers would come, denying the... I should have brought it up, but it's in one of the epistles of Peter in the New Testament. Scoffers will come, last days, denying the world that was, saying things have been the same forever. Nick Suter claimed that everything is a eukaryote, so it's the same kind. That when the eukaryote became a worm, it was still a eukaryote. And then when it became the first mammal, it was still a mammal, and so everything's still the same kind. That's using a really dishonest definition of kind, though. He claimed that one thing these two did not agree on was whether whales have vestigial bones, bones left over from when their ancestors were walking on all four legs on the land. Kent Hovind claims the bones that are accused of being hip bones from the days of walking around are anchor points for the muscles that control the whale's reproductive organ, because they don't have a hand to reach down there and adjust their reproductive organ when they are making baby whales. But Nick claimed that those bones are in female whales too, which do not have the same reproductive parts to control. And he claimed that they are in the smaller animals of the same order. Order or phyla. The dolphins and things like that, porpoises, they have that bone too, but it's not connected to the reproductive organ. He's spoken to a biologist about that who invited them to come with him the next time he cuts apart a whale they find on the beach. Kent Hovind pointed out if that's true about the whales, that's losing information. That's losing body parts and not gaining. And evolutionism says we start out with single cell animal, one single cell, LUCA. The LUCA stands for last universal common ancestor. But according to evolutionism, we had single cell organism, and it gained skin, it gained multicellularity, it gained body parts, it gained feathers, skin, scales, lungs, a reproductive tract, central nervous system. It gained all this stuff. Kent Hovind pointed out whale mating is not seen. They usually go down under the water for that, and so we know less about that than we know about some other animals that mate out of the water so we can see what they're doing, or mate in shallow, clear water. Okay, Nick Suter claimed he's got an example of evolutionism that happened, of any animal gaining information, or plant actually. It's called goats. I thought he said deer at first, but then maybe he said beer or beard. It's a kind of flower, and a whole new species of that flower came to be in Pullman, Washington. But it was still a flower, so it didn't change into something different. It just speciated, which does not disprove Kent Hovind's belief or understanding. Kent Hovind expressed skepticism about Nick's claim that dolphins have the same bone that the whales have, and that it's not attached to the reproductive organs. Kent Hovind pointed out when genes are doubled, it's called polyploidy. When the next generation of animals has a doubling of the amount of DNA, if it's just copying or doubling the same information, that's not going to get you new body parts. If a cow ends up with a fifth leg because of the genetic information to build a leg is doubled up, that's not the same as an animal that had no lungs getting a completely functional lung system. And Kent Hovind pointed out that 1 out of 20,000 mules are fertile. That's a fun little fact. Mules usually aren't fertile, but if a rare one, if they do sometimes come out fertile, then that would mean that horses and asses are the same kind of animal, and they could still be the same kind of animal even if there were 0 fertile mule, because they were similar enough to mate. And genetic speciation and genetic mutations could mean that animals with a common ancestor might not be able to interbreed later. Nick pointed out that he got a great example of genetic mutation, new information. E. coli, that experiment where they've got, I think I read up to 40 or 60,000 generations of E. coli, because they have a quick generation time. And they got them after 31,000 generations to eat citrate, well, to process citrate as a food source. But that's not growing a whole new body part, so I don't think that proves the single-cell organism turning into a mouse. Kent Hovind said worms always produce worms, and protistas always produce protistas, and that the evolutionary family tree charts show a non-protista, a protista becoming a non-protista, so it's becoming a different kind. And Nick said apes will always produce apes. And, well, he doesn't believe that if he believes apes had an ancestor that wasn't an ape. Different kinds of animals. The evolutionary tree is just like people getting married. No, it isn't. When people get married, or people make babies without being married, it's still a human coming out. They don't give birth to chimpanzees. Or half-ape men. Maybe there's a white supremacist yelling at his, they're rare, but they're out there, they're very rare. Yelling at his computer right now watching this. No, but blacks are half-ape. But such a person would be wrong about that. Let's see. Kent said, believe what you want. Kent is not disturbed by people believing what they want, although he's willing to try to convince you to believe what he believes is the truth. But he's not fired up about that, and he's not bugged by that, disturbed by that. He objects to kids being taught the religion of evolutionism in school because it's not science. Nick Suter brought up a case where the single-cell algae became a colony, and the scientists knew it was going to happen because they knew evolutionism, and they introduced a certain predator into the aquarium or wherever they had this algae kept in one place so they could study it. And Kent Hovind pointed out that was in 2019. That was 100 and something years before evolution was taught. 100 and something years before that, they should not have, even if it was finally proven true now, it should not have been taught for 100 and something years before the proof came in. But that was colonization. It's not a multicellular animal. He came up with the analogy about a fort. There was a predator, and then the algae grouped together. Well, if people find out someone or something is trying to attack them, and they build a fort, or they occupy a fort that's already been built, and we've got one person manning the cannon, another person manning the rifle, they're doing different things, but they're a colony. They are still their own individual organism, and that's what he says that the algae probably were in that one experiment where they became a colony, which is different than a single-cell organism. That's different than a single organism that has multiple cells. Nick Suter, 2 states proven. Oh, okay. No, he's claiming that algae was on its way to becoming multicellular, or it was multicellular, and so that proved evolutionism. He claimed that that evolution was all the LUCA, universal common ancestor. What was the L? Last universal common ancestor has already been proven before that experiment with the algae, and so he didn't need to bring that algae experiment up. But he never explained the proof of it. This argument usually about that common ancestor is we have similar body parts, and so that proves it, but a designer could design similar parts, so that doesn't actually prove it. Alrighty. He brought up the Catholics believe in evolution and they're not against scriptures. He made a claim about Darwin being a devoted Christian who was not against the scriptures. And he claims scientists don't want to destroy anything as a counter-argument to Kent's pointing out that some scientists probably love the theory of evolution. In fact, was it Julian Huxley, came right out and said the creation account and there being a God gets in the way of our sexual mores, our sexual life. Let's see, Kent Hovind pointed out he doesn't care what the Catholic Church says. Kent's not a Catholic, and same here, I'm not a Catholic, so Catholic Church believes this or that is a very weak, unpersuasive argument to convince me to believe something. And Kent offered to debate the Pope about it. And then Kent went on his diatribe about how there's two religions, Cain and Abel, and Kent's wrong about that. Kent does not give a good summary of the Cain and Abel story. Nick Suter claimed there are 30,000 sects of Christianity. According to Kent, none of them are true. 65% of Nobel Prize winners were Christian. Thanks, but okay. How does that prove evolutionism? Kent Hovind. Christian not exclusive. Oh, Kent says all those people aren't Christians that Nick is claiming are Christians. God made it. He asked about God making. He asked Nick's thoughts about God making everything in 6 days. Nick said whether those 6 days are literal or not literal are above his pay grade. Kent Hovind pointed out that the creation story, if it's literally true, it's plausible. The plants only need to wait 1 or 2 days to get the pollinating insects and to get the sunlight that they need. But if the 6 days are not literally 6 days, but some kind of a metaphor, then plants had to survive for thousands or millions of years without animals breathing out carbon dioxide for them and without pollinating insects, and that wouldn't work. Nick claimed the Noah's flood would have had to rain 6 inches per minute and no boat would have been able to survive that, and says God can miraculously keep plants alive for thousands or millions of years if the 6 days of creation are not literal. Kent Hovind pointed out that Nick gave a false illusion or illustration. The flood in the Bible was not only rain. There was water from the fountains of the deep, underground water coming up that did some of the flooding. And yeah, there is water in the crust of the earth now. That's 6 inches of rain per hour that Nick was citing is based on a calculation that needs to get Mount Everest covered, but Mount Everest is likely a post-flood occurrence, and it was not there before the flood. Let's see, he pointed out that mountain ranges seem to follow the coastline, and that follows his the prediction that he would make based on Noah's flood being true. Yeah, no Mount Everest. Nick would love to learn. What would we love to learn? Nick pointed out that you should go to somebody who believes something, gave an example. Atheists claim the Bible is evil because when the prophet Elisha was there in 2 Kings chapter 4, I think it was, there were 40 children eaten by a bear. But if you go to a minister, then you might understand how it's not so bad, that story. But an atheist will make that story seem bad. He went to a minister who said, go up. Is what the children said to the prophet is a threat to hurt him, so they were threatening to murder him. And then the story is justified. I haven't heard that explanation before. My explanation about that story, so that I am at ease with it, is children could just mean somebody not married yet. And those are probably priests of a false religion and who were well into their adulthood, just not married yet. And let's see. He thanked Kent for the information Kent gave about the flood. He hadn't heard of that information before. In this debate, they were respectful with each other. He talked about whales and DNA. Let's see. Okay, Nick defended the fossil record and the belief that the evolutionary belief about the fossil record, saying it's not circular. They do sort some things by layer, but it's not circular. He tried to since he was lying about this fossil record and the dating of things being circular, I don't think I appreciate his defense of that. He says that atheists accuse Christianity of having circular logic. Daniel predicted the Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah. Daniel was right. There's your circle. But he claims if you really look into Christianity, you find it's not circular logic. That there's evidences of Jesus being who Christians believe he was. But yeah. But wow, I agree with him. Christianity does not depend on circular logic, but not for the same reason he says. It's because God will tell you by the Holy Ghost if Jesus is the Christ. And that God telling you is outside of the circle of all the other different evidences and thoughts and arguments. Okay, he claims the fossils do have a record. They do have a date on them. He didn't mean literally, but we can be absolutely certain about the evolutionary date of fossils. He claimed... He encouraged people to read the studies about evolutionism. And evolutionism is the only way to account for old information. Okay. Kent Hovind pointed out in a story about the prophet Elisha and the bears, the children were tare. I'm not putting up quotes because it doesn't say children in the King James translation, but there's probably a better translation because we can see somewhere else in the scriptures Isaac or Jacob was accounted as a child, like right before he got married. And I'm sure they weren't getting him married when he was 10 years old. And Kent pointed out that you can't go back in time from Jesus to get Daniel to write something, so that's why it's not circular. Fossils in the dirt are just there in the dirt. They don't have a record. Science. Historically, there have been times when the majority of scientists, the predominant scientific theory was wrong about things. Kent pointed that out because he believes that evolutionism is another example of that, but they used to believe that different size objects would fall at different speeds, but at some point they did tests and realized, oh no, everything keeps falling the same speed. There is not a family tree of life. There are bushes of life because speciation and microevolution, speciation, which is microevolution, is true. Animals, the genetic changes, mutations we get when we're doing farming, couldn't survive in the wild, and you would need things to be survivable in the wild for the religion of evolutionism to be proven true. He pointed out that some the fact that Christians do accept the religion of evolutionism gives him job security. Nick did agree that a petri dish is different than the wild. Kent Hovind has debated one idiot who said, well, the hospital is the wild for the resistance, the antibiotic resistance bacteria. Oh, it isn't. Nick didn't say something that stupid. So good job on that one, Nick. And then Kent asked him where the layers come from, because dirt needs to come from somewhere. And if these layers are building up, and it's not because of what Kent says, a worldwide flood, that would make a lot of layers of dirt. Let's see. And Nick didn't give an answer for that I wrote down, at least. Nick made another analogy between skeptics of the Bible and skeptics of evolutionism. He said if you find something that you think is wrong or contradictory in the Bible, and it might not be. There have been people studying it for 2,000 years that believe it. He didn't mean one person alive that long, but for 2,000 years now we've had the New Testament and people have been studying it and believing it. And so maybe in your looking at it for 5 minutes and thinking you found something, you didn't really find something. And he claims evolutionism is like that. If you haven't spent all the many hours studying it that evolutionary biologists did, then maybe you just didn't actually disprove anything, like somebody didn't disprove the Bible in their 5 minutes of looking into it. And Kent Hovind asked if fossils are made today. And Nick said something like at the bottom of the ocean is the best place for that to happen. But let's see. Kent Hovind pointed out that the fossil record, all the sedimentary rocks and the bones found in them, are best explained by a global flood. So, thank you for watching. I had chores to get done today, so I have made different segments of this video. I just paused when the dryer was done, and now I'm going to put them together before I put them up on YouTube, or redo the video so I have one continuous video. Have a good day.